I absolutely loved the PS Vita when it first came out. I've been a PlayStation fan my whole life, and that for me was like the pinnacle of technology back in the day. I've recently come back to it and bought a Vita in 2023 and properly pimped it out. Thought it'd be very interesting to show you what I love most about the device, and I think it might blow you away. Look at it. It's so pretty. I'm not sure if I'm keeping the skin or not. I like the back. The back came out pretty well. At the front, I don't know. Number one, the Vita games catalogue is blooming awesome. You've got so many AAA titles and they are designed perfectly for this hardware. We have little touchpads on the back and we have very, very nice analog sticks as well. And a touchscreen, an OLED touchscreen if you go for the chunkier one. The original one does have an OLED screen. And the Vita games are absolutely designed to work perfectly with this hardware. Here are some of my favourites. Killzone Mercenary is a proper shooter that's designed for handheld, and it even incorporates the touchscreen in some fun moments. Like when you have to pick locks and things, you can use the touchscreen and twist, and I think it's a very interesting experience. The analog sticks are great for this sort of game, and it's above and beyond what we had on the PSP original. I feel like the thumbsticks on the Vita are really, really nice. Even though they're small, they're really nice for shooting games. Another one of my favourite games is Urban Trials. I love how these games are really designed for handheld and on-the-go gaming, because each little track only lasts a minute or so, and then you can save it, you can put it down, and you can carry on later. But I also think that this sort of quick turnaround in the levels makes it really quite addictive. A little bit of a shooter theme going on in this video. Unit 13. I remember playing this. I think my Vita came with this when I got it originally back in the day. And it blew my mind then, as it does now, that we have so many interesting shooter games on this console that you can play on the bus. There are tons of massive titles on the Vita, like Little Big Planet, Metal Gear Solid, Assassin's Creed, Uncharted, to name a few. If you did nothing but play Vita games on the Vita, you would have a great time. But that is just the tip of the iceberg. This console is so much more capable than that, and you've got so much value. So let me show you some other fun things. If you use Adrenaline, you can turn your PS Vita into a PSP, right down to the original menu structure. In here, I can play all of my PSP games and also my PS1 games, though I do play them in a few different ways with different launchers on the Vita. So you could argue, why buy an original PSP if the Vita will do both perfectly? You have better thumbsticks, you have an OLED screen, and they're all quite affordable, to be honest. Some of my PSP faves are Gran Turismo. I love a racing game on the go. Similarly, MotorStorm, I like that franchise and that spin on the racing genre. It was just something a little bit different. And Tekken 6. I have been a Tekken fan since the first one, since when you'd put it in your PlayStation 1 and you had to play a little game of Space Invaders while it loaded in. Yes, that's how much of a Tekken fan I am, and none of my friends will play me because I get very, very competitive. Tekken 6 is great, it has some of my favourite characters. I've lost the franchise a little bit with the latest iterations, so I really think sort of around this era of Tekken is my era, and I very much enjoy it on the go. It plays so smoothly on the Vita, as you would expect. And Sonic Rivals. I think the concept of this is very similar. It hasn't progressed much since the Mega Drive games, which was my very first console, but I just think there's something very adrenaline-fueled about this fast-paced game, and I think the graphics and the colours look stunning on the OLED screen. Also through Adrenaline, I set up my N64 emulator, which is Daedalus 64. N64 isn't a console I played when it first came out, so I'm very much enjoying catching up now with all these games on the go. And this is a bit weird, I don't know if I'm the only person in the world who likes this game, but I've always loved the Micro Machines franchise. I used to play it endlessly on the PS1, and I love that you can play multiplayer without it being a touchscreen because the cars are so dinky, and it's just such a fun racing game that's very unconventional and a little bit more art than science. Things often go wrong, and I just think it's very, very charming, so I'm really happy to have that on the Vita again. Another great port slash emulator, I'm not quite sure what you class it as, is this one, which runs classic Windowsy based adventure games. You know, the sort of puzzle ones where you click and you explore a room and you have to sort of figure out what's going on.
I glance over the books, vaguely hoping to find a copy of How to Deal with Poisonous Spiders While Tied to a Chair. No such luck.
I find these very fun, and the touchscreen is a very intuitive way to play these games on the Vita. Now, I've been using retroarch, one or the other, for my older emulation, and as I've used it on many different devices, it works brilliantly on the Vita as well. You can also access the PS1 games in here, which I think is sometimes a little bit easier because you don't have to boot down the device to get into Adrenaline. And my favourite PS1 games, of course, Metal Gear Solid. Obsessed with this game as a kid. I even had, you know, one of those cheat cartridge, God, I'm showing my age. I had a cheat cartridge at the back that you can sort of make infinite bullets or make you invisible, and I used to sort of speed run playing the campaign over and over and over. It was so revolutionary for its time, and it's next on my list to play on the Vita. I'm still in the tutorials at the moment, I'm a little bit rusty. I used to go to bed hearing "Snake, Snake" when you die. And another PS1 game that is a blast from my past is Road Rash. Making this list, I didn't realise how into sort of racing games I actually am, but quite a few of them are. I kind of like racing games with a twist, like Micro Machines is just silliness, and Road Rash I more enjoy beating people up as I pass them than actually trying to win the game. So what else is on my Vita? We have Hexflow, which is a very pretty launcher, and you can show off all the Vita artwork, and it's sometimes a little bit easier to use that rather than scrolling through the endless bubbles. This way you can access things quickly and it looks very pretty as well. Now, Yo-Yo Loader is one that's new to me, and I've been tinkering with it for the last week or so. It's for PC and Android ports, and sometimes sort of homemade ones as well. I've found some gems so far. Some of them are a little bit weird and wacky, but some of them are genuinely really good fun. Arcane Soul uses proper buttons as opposed to the touchscreen, and that's super nice to play. And PS Iv'e, I'm not quite sure how to say it, I'll put it on screen, is a Trials game. I love a Trials game, clearly, but this one kind of has an aesthetic that reminds me quite of Alto's Adventure, which is one of my favourite mobile games. So having a very beautiful aesthetic within sort of quite a traditional style of game, I thought was quite unique, and it's fun to play. Also, thanks to the wonderful community, we have some very solid, very good looking ports, like Mario Kart Vita, and Vita Doom, and also Vita Quake, to name a few. I think the main joy of the Vita, aside from all these amazing things that it can do that I've gone through, is the hardware. I think for me personally, for a handheld device, it's one of the most ergonomic and the perfect size. I love the D-pad on the Vita. I think for me, and maybe a couple of other people, that the Vita D-pad is sort of the gold standard. It's the thing that people compare other D-pads to. I love how responsive it is, and it's certainly very, very good for retro games and side scrollers. The OLED screen was so before its time. It's such a premium piece of hardware. I can totally understand why back in the day it didn't quite pan out, because it was quite an investment to get into, and then the games were pretty expensive as well. But now we're past all that, and we've got access to all of the emulation and everything else. We can really take advantage of this premium hardware at a very affordable price. The only thing that is missing for me is the R2 and L2 shoulder buttons. You can have a workaround by mapping them to the touch pads at the back of the device, so it's not the end of the world. But I honestly think if it had had those shoulder buttons, it would be almost a perfect emulation device. So in 2023, with a community around it, so many guides and so many ways that you can use this, I think it's the most exciting handheld you can get in 2023. Grab a piece of gaming history and add a Vita to your collection. Watch this video next, which is why I absolutely love and adore the Steam Deck. The Vita walked so the Steam Deck could run, and what a time to be alive.